Welcome to the California Housing and Community Development Training Series. Today's session is on the Affirmative Fair Housing Marketing Plan. After attending this training on Affirmative Fair Housing Marketing Plans, also known by the acronym AFHMP, participants will be able to understand the distinction between fair housing and affirmative fair housing. They will also understand what an AFHMP is, how to prepare one, how to submit one, best practices for preparing one, and the general timeline for submitting an AFHMP. What is fair housing? The Federal Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination by housing providers whose practices intentionally or unintentionally make home sales or rentals unavailable to individuals because of protected characteristics like race or color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, or disability. Jurisdictions such as states and cities may choose to add additional protected classes to the standard federal protected classes. For example, an additional local protected class may include income source. Grantees should verify if additional protected classes exist in their community to ensure that their AFHMP is responsive to the local community's needs. Some additional protected classes the state of California has adopted are gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, military or veteran status, genetic information, and age for individuals over 40. What is affirmatively furthering fair housing? It is taking meaningful actions to address significant disparities in housing needs and in access to community resources such as safe, affordable housing, transportation, jobs, health facilities, public green spaces, schools, etc. It also seeks to replace segregated living patterns with truly integrated and balanced living arrangements. Additionally, it aims to transform racially and ethnically concentrated areas of poverty into areas of opportunity. Finally, it helps to foster and maintain compliance with fair housing and civil rights legislation. What is an affirmative fair housing marketing plan? The AFHMP identifies who is least likely to apply for an available housing opportunity and outlines how the housing provider will perform targeted outreach to encourage that population to apply. The plan aims to eliminate discriminatory practices and the effects of past discrimination involving federally insured housing. It offers equal housing opportunities regardless of protected classes such as race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, or disability. It effectively markets the availability of housing opportunities to individuals of both minority and non-minority groups that are least likely to apply for occupancy. It is a useful tool to help housing owners or agents further equitable access to housing in a meaningful way. The AFHMP should be part of all new construction, substantial rehabilitation, and existing project marketing and advertising activities. Who should complete an AFHMP? Owners, agents, or developers of FHA subsidized and unsubsidized programs are required to submit an AFHMP for HUD review. AFHMPs apply to multifamily housing programs with 5 or more lots, units, or spaces. They also apply when a developer has sold 5 or more properties with HUD mortgage insurance within the past 12 months or plans to sell 5 or more properties within the next 12 months. The AFHMP should be approved by HUD at least 90 days prior to starting any marketing or advertising activities. What form should be used to complete an AFHMP? HUD provides standard templates for housing providers who need to complete an AFHMP for multifamily properties, single-family housing, condos or co-ops, or residential care facilities. There are different HUD forms available based on the property type. Each form provides detailed instructions on how to complete all fields within the form. As an optional activity prior to starting a plan, a housing provider may want to review any existing Assessment of Fair Housing Plan or Analysis of Impediments Plan prepared by the city, state, county, or local public housing authority. Such fair housing plans are a helpful starting place as they typically identify local fair housing issues, minority groups, barriers these groups have to fair housing, and they detail outreach strategies for community engagement and identify partners working towards achieving fair housing for all. Writing an effective AFHMP requires focusing on the following 4 areas. Targeting. Identify the demographic groups within your community least likely to apply for housing. Those least likely to apply for housing will look different based on the specific makeup of the community. Keep in mind that within a specific community, a minority group can look different from what is typically considered a minority group on the national scale. For example, in a community that is 95% African American and 5% white, whites can be considered a minority group within that specific community. Resources like Census.gov provide detailed guidance and datasets for identifying your local least likely to apply groups. HUD's AFH mapping tool is also an available resource. The second area to focus on in the AFHMP is outreach. You must demonstrate meaningful outreach strategies to ensure that the least likely to apply demographic groups know how to access housing opportunities. For example, for religious minorities, this may look like advertising in mosques, temples, churches, religious festivals, and other religious events. For ethnic minorities, it might look like advertising in specialty grocery stores, radio stations, affinity groups, restaurants, and magazines that target specific ethnic groups. For families, it may look like advertising in specific schools, playgrounds, daycares, and youth sports centers. To perform outreach to protected classes, you can also partner with trusted members of the community, such as nonprofit or civil rights organizations specializing in disability, gender equity, immigration, or even refugee issues. You can provide accessibility for individuals with disabilities or limited English proficiency by providing application materials in different languages or allowing different options for completing an application. For example, allowing an application to be completed orally in person, online, or via mail and paper applications. The third area of focus is indicators. It is important to create performance measurements to ensure that marketing is having the intended impact on the target population. The AFHMP form will require you to evaluate the process you use to determine whether your marketing activities have been successful in attracting individuals least likely to apply, how often you will make this determination, and how you will make decisions about future marketing based on your findings. Be sure to set metrics to evaluate the success of your AFHMP in attracting housing applicants who are underrepresented in the housing market where your housing programs exist, or are members of the federally and, if applicable, local protected classes. The final area of focus is staff training. Each housing provider should identify who is responsible for ensuring fair housing in their organization and provide them with additional training in federal, state, and local civil rights and fair housing laws, as well as education on what the AFHMP is. It is required that staff be provided this information orally, as well as in written materials they may reference. Staff should have this foundational knowledge so they may understand and carry out the purpose and objectives of the AFHMP. Plan to periodically assess staff knowledge on the AFHMP and fair housing and provide additional training where needed. HUD's advertising and marketing activities are not just limited to creating the AFHMP. Owners or developers must also do the following 3 activities to be in compliance. They must prominently display the HUD Fair Housing poster in all sale or rental offices. They must also make the AFHMP available for public inspection in all sale or rental offices. Finally, they must also ensure project site signs, if any, display the HUD-approved Equal Housing Opportunity logo, slogan, or statement in a conspicuous place. The AFHMP timeline for multifamily properties. This timeline begins with an optional review of local fair housing plans, such as the AFH or AI. Next, the housing provider will look at local population datasets to identify groups least likely to apply and complete the appropriate HUD AFHMP form. Completing the form should take approximately 6 hours. Once complete, the housing provider should submit the form to their local HUD field office for approval. HUD will review the AFHMP and provide approval or comments on any concerns. After receiving approval, the housing provider will place the AFHMP as well as the HUD Fair Housing poster in all sale and rental offices. Marketing activities will begin a minimum of 90 days before initial occupation. In 5 years, or when the next comp plan is due, the housing provider should review the AFHMP for possible housing market demographic change. If there has been a significant shift in the groups least likely to apply, the housing provider should submit an AFHMP with revisions to HUD for approval. Some best practices for AFHMPs include being proactive in offering extensive and continuous staff training and outreach to prevent housing discrimination in your community. Additionally, ensure that all staff read the AFHMP and comply with all civil rights and fair housing laws. In addition, maintain a non-discriminatory hiring policy for staff engaged in the sale or rental of housing. When creating advertising, include either the HUD-approved Equal Housing Opportunity logo, slogan, or statement. Ensure that posters and ads depict persons of majority and minority groups. Some common mistakes to avoid as you build your AFHMP include providing incomplete information on the number of units, price of units, or not attaching the housing market area to the AFHMP. Another mistake would be to perform insufficient demographic research. For example, categorizing all ethnic groups in your community as least likely to apply. Failure to advertise in places used by people who have been deemed least likely to apply is another mistake to be avoided. Additionally, do not forget to follow up with your community contacts to ensure that the housing opportunities have been advertised appropriately. Most importantly, make sure you create metrics to ensure you evaluate whether your marketing plan was effective. Thank you for attending this California Housing and Community Development Training session on the Affirmative Fair Housing Marketing Plan.